Training the dogs is one thing, but training the people, that's really where it is, because now they can be better to their dogs. Their dogs can trust them more, and they're going to be more successful. And I've done a lot of coaching of people at nationals, and it's really what turns me on, is putting together the dog-handler combination and helping them understand each other. And well, success is bound to happen when you can do that.
Well, good evening and welcome. This is our 5th Purina Masterclass this year. And well, I'm here with my good friend Ray Voigt. Ray, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
We're in we're in South Georgia. We're at our different studio, and we're trying to go. What did you think we were? You called us.
Oh, I said we look. I mean, it's pretty official. We got microphones and headsets. I feel like Joe Rogan ought to be with
Joe
us.
Rogan. We're going Joe Rogan on you tonight. Well, I guess before we do anything, I want to thank Ray and Purina and Carl Gunzer and the whole ProPlan team for sponsoring. Is this our 3rd or 4th year of the master classes? But any way you look at it, it's been a lot of fun, and we've brought a lot of interesting people into the venue, and tonight I do not think it's going to be any exception. Ray and I are going to talk a bit about. Well, we're going to talk about the Decathlete, the most versatile hunting dog. I've done some stuff for Purina, I've been to some of the herding dog events. I've been to HRC. I've been to a number of the SRS, the Master Nationals, and many field trial events over the years. And our discussion has come up about, all right, we get a new puppy. Our goal is to do it all. I want to compete in field trials and be competitive. I'd love to run the SRS. I'd like to pass the HRC, which is a difficult pass. Do it at a. Let me make sure my phone is shut off here. I'm sorry, everybody. So how do we start? And the reason this came up is, well, Ray, you went to your first SRS. You just came from the HRC Grand. And I get this question asked all the time. If I focus on one aspect, does the other aspect suffer? And what's more difficult? You get, a lot of the hunt test group that start doing the SRS, they need to up their game in the world of field trials, level tests, and vice versa. So, and you've got Rumor, who passed the Master National here in Georgia. How many years ago was that?
I guess that'll be 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Ray and I both have been very active in field trials over the years. Ray's finished multiple nationals, and he's got a new dog, Rumor. And Ray and I both started as hunters. I mean, that's what drew us into the game of retrievers. So that is our love. And that's pretty much, I'm not going to say everybody, but certainly when you go to the HRC and you go to the Master National, everybody's wearing camouflage and they're talking about hunting and they're trying to create hunting scenarios. So we appreciate that. We never really felt that what happened in field trials, even though it was very foreign from a hunting atmosphere, necessarily was contrary. I never felt it was contrary. I always felt that, it took the skills of control and marking to the ultimate level. But now that we've got these events that the SRS in particular, that force you to be competent at all the levels, that's where we're going to go tonight. Maybe. We're going to have some fun tonight.
Yeah.
Of course we are. We're going to talk dogs. I mean, how can you not have fun? And but feel free to ask some questions and give us a shout out. And we're going to talk. A number of the last master classes have been amazing. We talked about veterinary care. We talked about a number of things. We really haven't done much in the world of talking about retrievers this year. So this is kind of our opportunity to touch the bases and really talk about a subject that we've talked about. Ray, you've done a number of workshops and consulting deals for a number of the high end professionals in groups across the country, talking about, I think, almost this very same thing.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to say thank you for doing this. I mean, like you said, year 2 or 3 of this. I think this is a great venue for people to come on and learn about multiple things. I mean, you've had, veterinarian stuff. We've done retriever stuff. You've done bird dog stuff. Sheep, herding. Right? Have you done a herding person?
Oh yeah, we had
herding. I mean, so you have. Thank you for putting all this information out there for people, and for everybody. I hope your website, right, is the archive for all.
Yeah, all the Purina Masterclasses are available on EliteRetrievers.com. And if you have any questions, go in there and shoot us an email, and we'll help you find them. But there's a detailed a list of archives of Purina Masterclasses from great veterinarians, Dr. Janelle Appel, Arlie Reynolds, and a number of these other, Fonzie Bassan, who's one of the top end sheepdog herding dog professionals. Just great different perspectives on just the world of dog training, period. And if you think that, oh, that's a different game, you're kidding yourself. I just came from that Herding Dog National, which was a cattle dog deal. And they had to show that perseverance and enough aggressiveness to turn these animals that were 20, 50 times, maybe their size, and guide them through a course, but then show the finesse because if they were too aggressive, they got them too worked up and they couldn't finish the course. But if they weren't aggressive enough at times, the cows would just overpower them and go wherever they wanted to go. That's the same in all our games.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
it's the same.
As a student, like, you start to realize the similarities, right? Like, okay, one's a border collie, one's a retriever, one's a pointer, one's a spaniel. I mean, there's all these different dogs that have different applications, but when you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it, there's so many similarities and so many traits.
Yes.
And all these things that we want in these high-end dogs across the board, whether you're talking, retriever game, the Master National, the HRC, the SRS, the field trials. I mean, the dogs at the top of the level, at the top of each game, to get to that level is difficult. And that's what we're here for.
So I saw this T-shirt there. It was the Big L fan club. There was this border collie launching in the air, and they said, "What's the story with Big Al?" Well, then I watched Big Al, and Big Al was all in. I mean, he was flying around, and he was on the edge of control, and he made you smile. And we've run retrievers like that, and it takes some of the Big Al mentality to do any of these games. But if there's too much, you're out of control. If there's too little, they don't have the guts and determination and perseverance to find a duck, to push a cow, to dig into heavy cover and flush a pheasant in a spaniel world, or any of these things. And has it been enlightening? Absolutely. And every venue has their own technique and their own subtle ways to approach this. And so I think that the discussion tonight about creating the well-rounded retriever is very well brought up with us talking about because these are other retriever venues, but we're really trying to do the same thing.
We're trying to find the same type of dog, right? We're trying to find the dog that is stylish, that's smart, that's controllable. Same thing across the board, so, and I think, excuse me, that really comes into play when we start talking about going from a master level dog to a grand level dog to the SRS to a field trial. Those traits have to be like, that's even, to me, even more important, because you have all these different things that you're preparing for that all have a little different skill set. Well, it's the same, it's all a little bit different. And, it's a balance. Everything's a balance. Training's a balance across the board. But that's a real good balance to try if you're going to compete at all those different venues and be successful at it. And there's few people that do it now, obviously. We see them. And I think of, when you first started saying like the different things, I'm thinking like, man, it's this time, that's this time of year. Like,
Yes.
We went from the Crown, was that 2 weeks ago now? Maybe?
Yeah. Not
2
much
weeks
more.
ago, to the Grand, which just finished today, to the Master National, which starts in 2 weeks. And then the National Open actually starts before the Master National, or the day the Master National finishes.
So all 4 of those events you described
like in a month time frame.
Are the top of each of those different venues. The SRS Crown is the top of the Super Retriever Series.
Yep.
HRC Grand is the ultimate in Hunter Retriever trials. The Master National is the AKC Hunt Test, top end. And then obviously the Open Retriever National Championship is considered the best field trial retriever of the year in North America. Open or amateur, professional or amateur handled. And you're right. And you put them all in a little bit over a month.
Yeah, and I would say there's a lot of people. There's people that are going to compete in 3 of the 4 of those, right? That would be hard to do, especially with the way they time things. Like, to do all 4 of them, that would be something that I don't think's ever been done before. Now you just,
think so?
I saw. Now you just.
All right, guys.
I saw that look. Then all right, we might need to try something here.
Well,
yeah, it's an interesting deal. And when I first got Rumor, who you've referenced, and I wanted to be able to hunt her, I wanted to be able to field trial her. I wanted to be able to do those different things. Now, I'll say the SRS is fairly new to me and to Purina. With this year being our first year part of the Crown, which I think is great. I'm so happy to be a part of that venue now. Where I'm going to now, my interest is a little more intrigued with that as well. But if we really get down to it, all those things start with one thing. They start with basics.
Okay.
So if all I ever wanted was a gun dog, if all I ever wanted was a master dog, if all I ever wanted was a grand dog, if all I ever wanted was a field trial dog, if all I was going to do is compete in SRS, to me, I'm going to do the same basics no matter what that is. They need to understand completely all the ground rules. They need to understand the application of pressure and how to turn it off properly, how to respond, how to do all those things. And there's no there's no shortcuts. There's no shortcuts to that. So those basics are the most important building block. That's the foundation which the whole house is built, right? If we build the house out of straw, what's going to happen? So
the minute wind blows, it falls on.
So we need that strong foundation to start with. No matter what building we're putting on top of it, the foundation is everything. So, that to me is the first part. And then honestly, and I've talked to, like you said, been lucky enough to work with some of the top guys across the country in all different venues. And I have a firm belief that my next step would be teaching those dogs to learn how to mark and learn how to target and learn how to do things with gunners with white coats. So even if I'm going to run my hunt tests.
Well, whether it's white coats or just a visible person.
Yes. But I think the
white coat makes them more
because the
visible.
distance. Yeah, the distance. So I feel 100% it's easier if we teach that the white coat game, and we teach the distances, and we stretch them out, and we teach them how to target, and we teach them how to accept help, and we teach them how to find guns and pick out guns, that it's easier to do that and then come back to the hidden stuff, where vice versa, if all I've taught that dog from the beginning is to mark off a holding blind or behind bushes or different things or trees, now everything in the field becomes a possible station. And as far as moving, and especially the communication online is important, because as we get into all these different things, high level, like I got to be able to communicate.
Yes.
Right. I got to be able to communicate across the board. And that to me is going to give me the best option, the best tool to teach that dog the push, the pull, the heel, the hears, the subtle influencing, and all those different things that it's going to take.
So let's talk about really just teaching a dog to mark in any of these venues. Let's there is a person or something that is launching the object that the dog's retrieving. I mean, this isn't hunting. We try to create the hunting atmosphere, but there's the artificial aspect of the object they're retrieving is coming from either a winger or a person at a winger. And so when the dog is in the area where the retrieve is, they're aware of the person, of all the scent of the holding blind, of the trail of other dogs, and there's so many different things that come into play that a dog is processing when he's on a marked retrieve. And maybe he doesn't know right where the bird is, but he knows he's close, and he's becoming more aware of all these other factors. And then he learns to find the bird, sometimes learning to use the information of those factors. The sooner I think we teach them the mechanics of that process, whether the person is hidden or in a white jacket or in a black jacket, it's all the same stuff. And, when the high-level field trial dogs, Ray, didn't you always feel if I can get them to find the gun or get under the arc of a mark, I've done my job. On that particular day, on that event, what I've done over the years that got them to that event teaches them what to do when they've got there.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the landing zone, right? That's what I always coach people and talk to people. It was like, get to the landing zone, which to me is between the bird and the gun. And if you can find that holding blind, and now there's times wind and different things dictate stuff, obviously. But I'm going to be more successful day in and day out over the course of not just an event, a year, a career, by getting in that landing zone.
And that's where, so when we get back to starting a young dog, teaching them how to process the information in the landing zone and to efficiently figure out how to find where the bird is or whatever they're retrieving in relationship to where they land. And the more efficient they become, the more successful they're going to be. That's across the board, period.
Correct. And I think you can, now, I mean, if we're going to go back to the very simplest puppy marks, there are times when we can probably go too long, too fast, and cause them to run at the gun or things like that. But I mean, that could be a whole masterclass in.
Well, we certainly have talked about that, right? But I wouldn't treat. You're right. I mean, if you okay, Ray and Pat say let's start with white coat marks and long retrieves, and we've got a train in the background. Hopefully, that's not. We're in a cool little town of Boston, Georgia. That'll go through here in a second. But it would be, so you say, oh boy, okay, Ray and Pat say, let's start with field trial style marks. And we're going to stretch them out to 250 yards as soon as we can. Well, that's not what we want to do with field trial dogs.
Correct.
You want to teach the dog, ideally, to mark the bird.
Yeah, I mean, well, we want to be in the landing zone We also want to encourage run at the bird, use your eyes, run to that spot. And with a puppy, if we start to stretch them out too long, too fast, one, their eyes aren't developed enough to follow it, or we throw a dark bird or a pigeon, which is a small bird on a dark background, and they don't really see it very good. So what do? They run to the gunner, and then they either get helped or they hunt around the gunner and then they eventually find it. We're not teaching the mechanics of marking properly.
Right.
The first part of marking properly is tracking that bird or that bumper to the ground, staying on it, and then running at that spot. So with puppies, we need to start shorter and develop that habit before we start to stretch them out. Now, the end goal is 100%. We're going to get out to 250 or more when they're developed and they're physically able to do that. But that's the process of the whole thing, and that all, to me, along that way is going to be with the visible guns and all that sort of stuff to teach those mechanics.
So some of the venues, it seems they're very reluctant to use the gunner to help. They're more apt to handle.
I mean, in the grand scheme, I know sometimes in the competition you got to do that.
Sure you do.
But even in the field trial, you have to do. You're not going to get gunner help in a field trial and be successful. So I think it's a process of that dog learning to hunt and find things. So when they start to hunt the wrong direction, we can use that gunner to help them or influence their hunt pattern. And if I'm just going to handle all the time, I think I'm going to create a dog that's a little more uncertain, a little less confident, potentially can lead to popping in fall areas when they don't find the bird. So I think that's a key tool, even though I get it, and there's going to be plenty of times in competitions where I'm going to have to handle.
Right.
But in training, I'm not saying I would never do it in training, but as the process of learning and them learning how to like you said, get in that landing zone, processing information, all those different things, I feel like they have to learn how to be helped, because just the gunner moving, like when we talk about help, and I know you feel the same way I do, when we talk about gunner help, that doesn't mean yelling, running them right over to the bird, throwing it up in the air. It's as simple as the gunner moving a couple steps in a certain direction to influence that dog's hunt pattern off of the gun. So those are the little things that can help influence that dog's hunt pattern, because I feel like also dogs, the way they learn how to find birds. So if they run out there and they just run in circles as fast as they can with their head up, and eventually they stumble on the bird, that's how they start to teach themselves how to hunt, because that's how they've become successful. So when they're at that younger age, it's critical to get them, when they start to range off, to have that gunner get them back in the area, to be more methodical, to really to learn how to hunt properly, because that's going to shape that behavior. To me, that shapes the behavior for the rest of that dog's life.
There's a lot of people that would almost prefer to have the less experienced person running dog and the more experienced person throwing the bird, and reading that and being able to almost mold and massage the dog's hunt pattern to get the dog to find the bird without really feeling like it's being helped. If the dog, when it's helped properly, I want the dog to think they found the bird on their own, not because somebody told them where it was.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. When I have puppies, I try to be the one that's out in the field as much as possible.
And so you're watching it, and so you're right. When you pheasant hunt, and you teaching a dog to quarter, where you move influences where they look. And it's the same thing when you're trying to guide a dog into a smarter hunt pattern when you're the gunner. Like it's when I was first taught, you moved without the dog seeing you move. And then when they would turn, they would relate to you, and you could guide them into a smart hunt. And when they started to think or believe that they found the bird really without anybody else telling them where it was, they became more confident in finding birds. And then they became better at it. They became more aggressive. They used some of that lesson of the gunner assistance to be smarter. And once, the great dogs, if you get them between the bird and the gun, I mean, they make a pass or two, but they're coming up with the bird. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You can think of all the ones you stood next to. Rarely, once they broke down and established an identity of the fall area, did they not come up with the bird reasonably quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so that's what really the goal would be. So that is, to some degree, more a field trial style beginning. I guess the distance and the visibility of the guns and the configurations, certainly, the white jackets and the process. But I think whether you're pointing out the guns or using the gun to point out or blowing a duck call, I think those are the bells and whistles part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll fall on my sword. Like, I think if you do that foundation, like we're just talking about, and then teaching them how to mark off the guns and use the guns and to influence hunts and teach them how to do all that stuff and get that distance out there where they're comfortable looking long, they're comfortable looking past short guns. Then when we want to bring that back in to use holding blinds and use bushes and more of the hunt test distances, I'm a firm believer that makes that whole process easier. I think it's much easier to go that route than it is to start with hidden guns and holding blinds. And then all of a sudden, when you get that dog to 3 years old and now he's a master hunter, now I want to go run a qualifying, or now I want to try an SRS. I mean, I can't tell you the people that have called and said, how do I get my dog to look long, even with the person standing out there in a white coat? It's because they're not patterned to that. But if they have that background, bringing it in, to me, it's now I'm not going to say obviously every dog's a little bit different, but that whole process seems much easier to me to do it that way. And, you brought up a point earlier, like, if you're training on all these things, do you enhance something? Do you diminish something? I mean, what was the old saying? If you enhance one part of training, you almost always diminish another.
And that's
right.
If you're training just field trials. If you focus on a certain type of a long punch bird all the time, and then you go to the weekend and they do a couple tough check down birds, you're going to be probably at a little disadvantage because you've patterned them to a different program. But
so when we talk about training and teaching the field trial basics and the foundation, that doesn't mean that every bird's 300 yards long. I mean, that means that they have the capability of going that distance if we need them to. Right. They have the capability of looking out, picking out hard to see guns. They're comfortable looking past short guns, things like that. Now, my process when I was running Rumor, because I did master test qualifying all together, all in the same summer. And I do believe if I was going to go out, I mean, we talk about theming training, right? So sure. Again, back to field trial basic, we theme short birds, we theme long birds, we theme things because we feel like if we get that repetition, that dog's going to learn and comprehend that concept better. So going from one event to the other, I think like I feel like it would be harder for the dog if I did field trial setups one day with a long-retired gun, and then tomorrow I did a hunt test setup with 350 to 100-yard birds, and then tomorrow, the day after that, I go back. They hunt short on the long bird, then we do the short bird, they run through it, and then we go back to the long bird. I just don't feel like that dog's ever really getting a chance to comprehend what it's doing. So my philosophy when I was doing this, because now again, Rumor had the field trial basics foundation. 2 weeks before her first master test, everything kind of got brought in, got holding blinds, duck calls, the gun, all the deal. And she had about a 2-week acclimation period, I would call it, to all those things that are what you're going to see in an AKC hunt test. Walk-ups, diversions, all diversion shots, all that sort of stuff. And then she went out and she ran that. And then there was a weekend off. And then the next thing she was going to run was a qualifying. So then I had 2 weeks to focus back on the field trial part of it. And then she got a jam in her first qualifying. And then 2 weeks later, she ran another hunt test. So in a way, even though I was doing things at the same time, I felt like her training was was still themed, because I kind of give myself like a 2 week window. So I had a field trial. I prepped for that for 2 weeks. Then I had 2 weeks before the hunt test, so I could prep for that for 2 weeks, and then going back and forth. And what I found with her having that basics, that foundation, she went back and forth so easily. Like, we passed the hunt test, we finished the qualifying, we passed the hunt test. She got a second to qualifying. She passed 2 more hunt tests. Like, I mean, it was this easy flow back and forth where I didn't feel like, oh, yeah, these first, this is going to be hard because we just did field trials for a week. I mean, having that background and being able to go back and forth just really, to her, it made sense.
Well, and I really do think that will make sense to any dog that's been prepared in a way to be well-rounded. And I never felt like, once I had a field trial dog well balanced and trained overall, I didn't feel compromised if I focused on a different style test that I ended up seeing on the weekend, because I think, the mechanics of doing, of being responsive to being communicated to by me, the handler, going where you're pointed, listening to the rules, checking down and responding to that kind of level of communication, doing the water rules, all of that enhanced the overall picture of things. But the bottom line is, they had to be well-rounded and exposed to that over an extended period of time. But adapting, moving back and forth, some people think that they can't do that, and I couldn't disagree more.
Yeah, I mean, some dogs may have a hard time, like if you're going back and forth day to day to day to day, because the dog never really gets a grasp on what you're asking it to do. But I agree with you. I mean, I think the fundamental things you're asking that dog to do: sit, watch birds, move with you, stop on a whistle, change direction, get in the water. I mean, those things don't change.
How often did you and I take a dog at the end of the field trial season who's never pheasant hunted, really never, and take them out to South Dakota, and in an incredibly short period of time, pretty darn quick, they use the intelligence, the bird finding, the perseverance, and all of a sudden it looked like they'd been pheasant hunting forever. Almost like a day.
Every year. We did it every year. I mean,
and it was so fun to watch them.
Yeah.
And you thought, but you realized, even though the artificial aspect of field trials, it taught them the same skills, just to do a different thing. And when they used those same skills to something else that they learned, they were lights out.
Well, there was a couple. We had a dog named Turbo, who we had field trial dogs who finished 3 nationals in a row. We used to take him pheasant hunting every October to try to influence his hunt pattern, because he got where he would run with his head up, and he would kind of, what I would call, make bird dog loops when he was hunting the birds. Like, he would run as fast as he can with his head up, and it didn't feel like he was really trying to dig birds out. Well, every October, nationals in November, every October, we would take him to a pheasant farm and pheasant hunt him and get him to really go into the cover and root birds out and dig birds out. And I felt like that had a positive influence on his hunt pattern going into the national.
And there was, you'd hear people say, "Oh, you don't want to hunt your field trial dog." I never felt that way. And there's a great example.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't probably want one that I couldn't. No, I mean, there's certain times, like if I'm in the middle of teaching a dog how to run blinds, I'm going through double T, I'm going through pattern blinds, I'm not going to take that dog and put him in a pheasant field where they learn how to run with their head down, right? Because now, when I'm trying to teach blinds, I want them to target, look to the end of the field. If I'm in the middle of trying to teach that, and I'm at the same time I'm teaching you to quarter with your head on the ground 24/7, I feel like I might not be doing you the justice of learning how to run blinds the right way. So I may wait till after the blind process, after I've taught you how to run blinds, But every dog I have, I want to be able to duck hunt with them. I want to be able to pheasant hunt with them. And I want to be able to do all those things because that's why, I mean, how many, you brought up earlier, all those guys, those HRC guys, like that's all we talked about last week was, duck season's about to start. Where are you going to go? Where's your next trip? I mean, everything is about hunting there. And that's why I got into it. Ended up in the field trials, but that's why I got into dogs. That's why you got into dogs.
Right.
That's why so many of us, no matter what venue we're competing in, that was the principle and the reason why we got into this. So I want a dog that I can be able to do that stuff with. I mean, I took every year when we were training, I took dogs from the kennel. We would take them, like you just said, to South Dakota. For a while, I had a duck boat. I would take dogs from the kennel and take them duck hunting, like client dogs, running field trials, nationally competitive dogs. And at the end of the day, we had some fun, and we would duck hunt or we would pheasant hunt.
Well, don't you think a dog named Keeper, probably her love for hunting ended up being one of the most valuable things in her field trial career? Her intelligence of how to figure out
How to find birds.
And she was prey driven. She loved to hunt. And all right, so we had a question come in. Thank you, Robin. Robin popped it up. Somebody wants to know what are water rules. Ray, would you give us your
So
opinion
the way
on it?
I would describe water rules is when given the choice between water and land, fundamentally the dog should choose water. So if you have a channel in front of you, so it starts with cheating singles. It starts with swim by, and then we go into channel blinds, cheating singles, where when the line to the bird or the bumper is through the water, that dog has to choose to take water. So through handling, through maybe some recalls, through some different things, maybe casting, pressure for cast refusals, all those different things, teach those dogs that they need to make the decision to get in the water when given the opportunity. So that's what water rules are. If the bird's through the water, you need to go through the water.
So it's not just a gimmick of I want to see a dog swim because it looks cool. There's a real efficiency factor in being able to locate game or an object that you saw to go straight at it. I mean, if any of you have deer hunted and or duck hunted or pheasant hunted and shot a bird and didn't have a dog, if you didn't stare at the spot and walk right at it, it was real easy to get there and not know where the bird was and the most profound example of that in my life was a moose hunt in Alaska when I shot a nice bull moose at 192 yards because that's what the rangefinder said. And I said, wow, this is awesome. And he went down in a meadow and I started walking and I walked around trees and an hour and a half later, I couldn't find that moose. And I was really getting frustrated.
We're talking about something bigger
Like
than
a
a
Suburban,
Volkswagen.
like a Suburban land. And so I ended up walking back up to exactly where I shot that moose. And I couldn't see him. He had moved a little bit, but I stared at that little meadow and I climbed through every briar patch and I went straight as an arrow. And in 15 minutes, I found that moose. And I realized, wow, that's probably why we teach dogs to go straight, because it's the best way to find. And so when you're hunting, the more quickly your dog finds the bird, A, you're more likely to get it. B, you're hunting again and you're not spending much time looking for something. So there's a very practical reason for the water rules. Now, the games have taken that to the nth degree to make deviating and dealing and giving into the easier factors extreme to deter their ability to know where they're going. So we teach them to go straight. That's why we teach the water rules.
And also now there's judging. Again, you're judged if the dog runs around the pond or gets out of the water early or different things like that. I mean, that's, whether it's SRS you get points, field trials, you're judged differently. The hunt test affects your marking and your perseverance score. So there's different reasons, not only from a practicality standpoint, but from a competition standpoint, where we need to teach them how to get in the water and how to go straight in the water.
Well, and when you do blind retrieves, I mean, the idea of a blind retrieve is to demonstrate the ability to keep your dog on a straight line from where you are to where they need to be. And they put a lot of things in between there to make it hard to do that. So if you're going to demonstrate control and the ability to direct them, those rules and those factors are important to do. And that's why we do that. And that's why all of the dog sports, and even the herding dog deals I watched, ditches and wind be factors. They're all things that make it difficult to accomplish the goal. And so, but all right. So Ray, let's just have this vision. Your next dog, Rumor. Let's say you bred Rumor to the national champion, and you get this puppy, and you say, I want to have this dog be an amateur field trial champion. I want it to make the Derby list. I want it to be an SRS Crown champion. I want it to pass the HRC Grand and the Master National. I want to do those 5 things.
Was that all? Okay.
And so what? All right, let's just have this brainstorm blueprint. So you do your basics. You come out of basics. And
Well, then my next thing's going to be the Derby, obviously, because the Derby's got a time frame, right? They have to be under 2 years old.
okay,
So my next thing is going to be I'm going to take that basics and that foundation, and I'm going to progress that through the distances, the multiples, teaching them to do multiples. We're going to do all that sort of stuff and we're going to compete in derbies. And if I'm going to do it, like at that point, a dog that's under 2, I'm going to focus on the Derby.
so if you don't know what a derby is a field trial a category for dogs 2 years and under, and they do marked retrieves, birds that they see thrown, and typically only doubles, sometime every now and then a triple, but no
And sometimes
blinds,
a
just
single.
marks,
Sometimes single.
and sometimes singles.
Yeah.
So the more accurate they are at finding marks, and in a derby, you're looking for that extraordinary marker, the dog that knows right where the bird is, and he goes to it and he finds it better than anybody else.
Yeah. So, I think we take all those things we learn the basics and we take those foundational skills we just talked about with targeting and, learning how to focus on a gun, find a gun, pick out a gun. I mean, all those things are going to be key foundational elements of a derby.
Right.
Looking past, you got a flyer 75, 100 yards away and you get a long bird 200 yards behind the back of the flyer, they got to be willing to look for it. So that's all part of that whole process we just described, getting them started, being willing to look past short guns, picking out long guns, all that. So I think that would be my process there. And then the next step, depending on, I'd probably go into qualifying, because if we've made the Derby list, again, my process, I'm running blinds and teaching blinds at the same point.
That's what I wanted to say to you. I said, when we were together, when our dogs were really ready to compete and be competitive in a derby, they were pretty much ready to be competitive in a qualifying at the same time, which meant that they could do the same thing as a derby dog, add a bird, and do blinds as well.
Yeah. So, part of that whole process, like you just talked about, the accuracy of a derby dog and being good, part of learning how to run straight and learning those water rules that we just talked about, all that is through handling. So I think I need to be able to teach that dog how to handle and go through that whole process to be a really efficient marker. And you at home, you may be thinking like, well, what is that? Why do you have to be able to handle to be a really good marker? And you don't have to, but it makes them understand the rules better. It teaches them how to fight factors. So if I can teach you how to hold the crosswind, I can teach you how to do a down the shore bird, I can teach you how to get in a channel, that's going to make you more efficient at finding that mark because of what Pat just talked about with the moose. If you throw the bird at the end of the channel and you run all the way around, you may not remember where you were or how you got there when you run all the way around, but if you swim directly to it, you have a pretty good idea of where you are. So that's all part of that handling, because we not only teach them how to run blinds, but we teach them how to go straight through handling. So that would all be, I wouldn't just focus on training a derby dog, like just doing doubles, just doing marks.
Right.
It would be the bigger picture to me, especially when you say, we want this dog to be able to run at an all-age level. We want this dog to compete at the Master National, at the Grand, at the Crown. That's a huge part of all of this. So I would be wanting to focus on the bigger picture, and we're doing the derbies in the meantime.
So when are you going to start to expose this dog to the hunt test style with marking scenarios?
Honestly, me, probably a couple of weeks before I run it in its first hunt test.
So
Whether
are you going to run this dog in the first hunt test before it's out of the derby, before it's two?
Probably not.
Okay.
Not that, I mean, again, I'm not saying that's wrong if somebody does that. I'm just saying for the teaching the dog and having them the most sound, and to me, the understanding the concepts the best, I would wait till that dog was over 2 years old. If I'm going to do everything. If all I'm going to do is run a hunt test, well, I could probably have that foundation ready by the time they're a year and a half old, and feel like I can do all those things. And then if my end goal was just to run masters, I think we could start doing that before they're 2 years old. But if I want that end goal being the all-around dog that can do everything, I'm probably going to stay focused on that a little, on the big picture. So I'm going to probably get through the derby, maybe even get to where I'm ready to run a qualifying. Again, that level, like we just talked about with Rumor. And now I'll start to mix it in. So now I'm going to use those holding blinds. I'm going to blow duck calls and, swing the gun. I mean, the HRC, AKC hunt test, you have the attention get in the field. You got that station blowing the duck call. Well, when you get to the HRC, there's a winger, and that's it. There's no sound. And that dog has to swing off the gun, and you're shooting the gun. You're sitting on a stool or a bucket like this. And that dog has to swing, and then you're shooting the primer and the whole 9 yards. So all that's going to be a process to understand, because if I'm coming from field trials where they can see the gun, where they see it before it's thrown, and then I go to AKC tests where they're blowing duck calls and getting their attention, now I got to figure out how do I get them to swing with this gun? And there's different methods of that, and I'm sure there's a lot of really smart trainers that could give you a lot of different ways. To me, I would go back to, I got these people in white coats again.
So
and
I'd sit on the bucket. Deal with this,
because if they know the communication for moving with me and swinging with me on the here and heel, now if I have the gun and I can say here and heel, and when I move that gun, it moves them to something they know. I think if I go here, and they start to learn how to swing with the gun, and now it's a target. Heel, swing with the gun, move to a target. So that's how I would start that process for a dog that's been foundationally trained with picking out the guns. And it wouldn't be picking out it would be shorter, it'd be wide open, but I would have that person there to start with, and then maybe they just stand up above the holding blind, so it's a little more hidden. And then we get to where we're swinging to the holding blinds and getting them just that movement where we can start with talking here and heel, or just like we would when we're trying to get them to pick out the different stations, and doing that with a gun and starting to use that gun here, heel, here, both sides, back and forth, and then taking that away, getting them just move with the gun.
So what I'm hearing is part A is just getting them to be smart about what they do when they get to the landing zone, whether it's a white jacket, a duck call, the guy in a deal, or no duck call. We're talking about what they do when they get near the fall area. Part two is getting them to be better at being able to see the marks and see the birds in the air, whether they're at 400 yards with a white jacket, at 140 yards with a duck call, or 100 yards with no duck call. Then it's the mechanics of getting them to understand, oh, I'm going to see a bird thrown in a multiple of different styles.
Yeah. And again, the balance, I mean, I think you got to balance head swinging with all that stuff, right? Like if they just learn how to swing to bushes or swing to different stuff, just like they can learn real quick to head swing when there's multiple white coats out there. So, I mean, I think all of it's a balance, between you got to teach them, but you also have to make sure you maintain those fundamentals, which is sit and watch your birds too.
So I gave you this big, huge, grandiose dream plan. The National Open's about to happen. The dogs that are going to be the most competitive are 6, 7, and 8-year-old dogs. So many people, they're so impatient to get this 20-month-old dog to be an HRC Grand Pass and all of this. If their plan or goal was to do all of this big picture, what you're saying is, let's be a little more patient. Let's let this develop over time. Let's maybe master one aspect, expose them to the next.
Yeah, I mean, and there's certainly always exceptions to all the rules, you know. I mean, and there's dogs that have passed grands really early, and there's dogs that have passed Master Nationals or got their titles really early, and things like that. But if you're telling me your end goal is to be able to do all of these things, I think we got to let the dog dictate a little bit of it too, because I don't want to. If I need them to show me they understand these different things before I start exposing them to something else, just from a teaching standpoint. So if I'm trying to work on learning how to swing with the gun because I want to go run a finish test and get to the grand, if I can't get them to swing with me good in training, how am I to expect that they're going to do it well when I go to the test? And then in the flip side of that is, if I'm in the middle of working on that, then why am I going to go run them in something else in the middle of that, in that learning phase? So to me, yes, I would say, and I think in general people tend to try to rush things.
Yeah.
Not, again, there's dogs that are certainly capable of, you know, doing all kinds of different stuff at a very high level and a very quick level. So, you know, but I just feel like
I've got some good questions that popped in here, so we'll grab these. Pardon me? So we got Kirsty Blair asks, Kirsty from Australia, by the way. Very cool. Is there a point at which it's too late to make improvements to the quality of a dog's hunt pattern on marks? Obviously, it's optimal to build a quality tight hunt during a young dog's basics program, but can a loose hunt still be effectively addressed in a 2 to 3-year-old dog?
I say yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it might take a little longer. It might take a little, you know, just take more repetition or whatever, because you're changing a behavior, you're changing a habit. No different than people that have a habit, they can change, right? You can change.
I think you could do it in dogs twice that old.
Yeah.
And we do it all the time. And they'll go through phases where their hunt pattern gets sloppy, and we work on certain aspects and theming the setups and use different things to sharpen up their hunt pattern. And so it's something that goes through ebbs and flows, I think.
Yeah.
But without a doubt, you can change and modify a dog's quality of their hunt pattern, I think, well beyond a 2-year-old.
I agree. Yes. I mean, whether it's, you know, I mean, you can do it by distance of your marks, whether you're throwing bumpers or birds, you can do it with the amount of cover you have. You can do it with, I mean, wind direction. Pay attention to the wind direction. You know, if the dog runs out there and smells it, or, you know, downwind, crosswind, all those sorts of things are going to have an effect on their hunt pattern. I mean, if you're trying to go back to the most basic level, you could even salt the area, meaning putting multiple birds out, throwing, you know, when you throw to the area, there's already multiple birds out there. So the dog gets out there and finds the bird more quickly and successfully, to try to get them to go in there and like, oh, it's got to be right here because there's a bird here. You know, they find it right away.
When identifying why their hunt pattern isn't good. I mean, because it's not the same thing with every dog. Some dogs are more anxious and worried. Some dogs are scattered and not concentrating. And the next question kind of talks about it a little bit, as Mike Gibson says, what are some tips for improving, enhancing a young dog to keep its head up and on a target while en route to a mark?
Throwing multiple birds throwing multiple birds when the dog's en route. So
they're key, right?
Fire drill, right? So we use this a lot with younger dogs when they're trying to start to increase distance. So they run out and they naturally want to drop their head, or they start hunting halfway there, 2/3 of the way there. So to counter that, you throw the mark, the dog takes off, and maybe 1/3 of the way there, half of the way there, you just throw another bird to the same spot. The gunner throws to the same spot, and maybe even 2, 3, 4 times en route while that dog's on the way out there. And that bird falling out of the sky, or that bumper falling out of the sky in the same spot, is going to keep them focused ahead of them because they're watching that bird come down while they're on the way there versus, halfway there, they put their head down and they're looking around. And now, it just keeps them focused and locked in on that spot and keeps them driving.
I mean, I've done things with dogs that are totally foreign to those length of marks and thrown objects that they actually don't retrieve, like a white feed sack with a rock in it that a dog can see from a great distance with a bird in the area. I mean, those are things. But I think what you're saying is something that you're right. Just you see a dog's pattern to start to lose his focus and drop his head and start to hunt, and you throw that next bird right before you think they're going to do that. Yeah. Not necessarily after they start to hunt.
The key, I was just thinking the same thing. The key to me on that drill is doing it before they start to hunt. Because again, I don't like to have, if I can help it, I don't want to have that gunner start yelling and making a commotion, because what does that do? That draws that dog's attention back to the gunner. And in the same sentence, we're talking about trying to get them to focus and running at the bird versus the gun and be focused on that spot. If I wait till that dog starts to hunt, now I have to get their attention. So now I'm drawing their attention back to the gunner, and they watch that throw happen, which in the grand scheme of things is going to teach that dog to stay focused on that gunner while it's running out there. But if you can throw it while the dog's still focused on that spot, on the mark, it just falls out of the sky, and it keeps them focused on the destination versus drawing their attention back to the gunner.
And it gets in the habit of keeping their head up with the anticipation of something happening up there. Yeah, it makes great sense. So John would ask, interested in any tips, tricks you guys have to help more frantic, animated dogs build a more relaxed, level-headed mindset online in intense game day situations. Thank you.
I'm going to let you take this one. Sorry, John. I know John, and I know the dog he's talking about, and this is also international. John's from Canada, and I've tried to help him with this dog, so I'm interested in what you have to say.
Well, there's a lot of different ways to manage dogs with a lot of intensity. To me, probably the most effective has been a heavy workload, not necessarily correction-based. Things like that where they do a lot, and you use maybe a little bit of fatigue, maybe a little bit of to expose them. What do they call it? I think behaviorists call it systematic desensitization, where you expose a dog to a stimulus that affects them enough that it becomes more routine. So that sounds good. Like, oh yeah, let's do that. Well, you're right. John's got a job and a family, and he said, oh, so you're telling me to do 7 tests a day, 7 days a week? Well, to some degree, doing a ton of work, I think, has been one of the things. Exposing a dog to the atmosphere that makes him excited enough that it becomes not just a once in a while thing, but more of a norm thing. And maybe not always having that stimulus of that atmosphere be about retrieving. Maybe he gets to that scenario that makes him crazy, and he does things that aren't necessarily related to retrieving. Maybe he doesn't even get a bird. Maybe he does different things, and you expose them to things like that. In the old days, I mean, yeah, you just correct them, and you think, all right, we're just going to correct them, and they're going to get better. Sometimes that works, but a lot of times it almost makes it worse. And that's probably what John's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, she can get a little frantic, not just online, but I think out in the field a little bit as well. And comes out more at a field trial. So that, you can only expose them to field trials so many times without letting them retrieve. And there's different things there. So, I mean, I would say it's a very tough situation. Honestly, it's a tough thing to deal with, and just trying to do different things to get the most stable response, whether it's
Was it turbo? So our routine oftentimes, you remember this? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Our routine typically was we would work a dog, and when they were done, we'd put them on a stakeout line and give them some water, and they'd lay around and roll in the grass. But we rarely brought a dog out and staked them out before we worked them. I mean, maybe we did later on, but we broke the routine. And sometimes because there was the triggers. You pop the dog out of the truck, you have your white jacket on, your whistles, and you start going, and all of a sudden they just start to get amped up. Breaking a little bit of the norm of the routine of what goes on.
Yeah.
I know a few dogs, if you walked up to the stakeout line after they'd been staked out and took them to line, they were different than if you took them out of the truck and took them to line. And maybe that wore off, but
changing the routine.
Key.
Because, I mean, we create the ready, set, go mentality, and especially those of us that, if you train as a hobby, and even those of us that are training professionals, but we get out of the truck, we put the collar on, we go to the line, we run. I mean, we create that atmosphere, especially, if you're training after work. You get home from work, you throw the dog in the truck, you rush out to the field. You get them out of the truck, you run them. I mean, it's like this whole thing that, it just builds that frantic nature because it's the pattern that they've gotten into. So, yeah, getting out there and not running right away, or getting out there and doing some healing drills, or going to the holding blind and coming back and doing different things. If you have especially you need a group that's patient, because,
well, that's right.
You're trying to get a setup in before dark, and that's not always, but like you said, maybe you don't retrieve. Maybe your time, the 15 minutes that or 10 minutes that test was taking, maybe you do 10 minutes of obedience around the line and from the truck to the holding blind and back and forth, and you don't do the setup but that's your time.
And you've got to get out of the habit of saying, I want to see if he can do this test. That gets us in so much trouble. Oftentimes the most important thing is working on what you need to work on, not on seeing if they can do the setup all the time. All right. Bob asks, my dog is 17 months old, does multiple marks and blinds, but when sent to a bumper along the top of a bank, he will return via water, which, although shows me he doesn't want to cheat, isn't the straight line back. Have I overdone cheating in the water? Oh, so this dog will go out of his way to return via water when he doesn't have to. Well, I don't think it's an issue with the return, but if the dog is out of balance in his water on the way out, if you've just gone overboard, yeah, you can overdo it.
You can, but again, 17 months old, I mean, I think, to me, I'd rather have him fully understand the water rules at that age and be a little bit overly watery, because I think that's something you can balance out and make them more comfortable through tune-up drills and through other things. Right. And it's going to naturally deteriorate a little bit as the dog gets older. So yes, you can 100% overdo it, but I would rather at 17 months old err on the side of being a little more watery than not.
Yeah, I agree. You're right. And I think when they're at that little bit of naive, they're not really questioning authority. That age to like the 2.5 is kind of that window where they don't want to get in any trouble. And then the naiveness wears off. And then you're right. Then you wish you had a little more of this. Mm-hmm. All right. We got some other questions popping in.
Oh.
Rick asks, at what point do you start teaching concepts? Well, I think you start teaching concepts right when you start doing multiples, don't you?
I would argue even sooner than that, because, I think the concepts are, you're starting to teach marking concepts right away. Like to me, a concept is running at the bird versus running at the gun. Being a little bit, not really a concept, but being a little bit still on line and not struggling. And then when we get to where we're marking those singles, all of a sudden we start putting multiple guns out, even for young puppies that are 4 or 5 months old. And I'm going to start having a little bit shorter gun and a little bit longer gun and teaching them to do the longer one first. It's not tight, but they're seeing a gun and they're looking somewhere else and finding another gun and potentially going a little bit farther. So I think, to me, that's a concept in itself. So, I mean, to me, you could argue that really right away you're starting to teach concepts.
Absolutely. And when you think of a concept, identifying
Like
what is the challenge of that concept, and you don't have to actually do that test, but like you said, you can create that in singles.
But like now, if you're talking about like concept of a indent or concept of a long retired gun, or that's probably going to come. I mean, I think you're starting to teach those concepts when you have multiple guns, really.
When you go out and do a long retrieve, then you come back and do a short.
Retrieve. I mean, that's the concept. You can set up an indent configuration with a young dog, a 6-8 month old dog that doesn't know how to handle and doesn't do multiples and isn't steady. I can still start working on teaching the concept of an indent or the long gun behind the back of a short gun or different things like that in my singles, just with multiple gunners.
When I think a lot of people, especially when you're focused on like getting a dog to do derbies and you're thinking, oh, my biggest thing is I don't want him to go back to the old fall. So I've got that long memory bird and the shorter bird diversion bird, and all of your focus is on don't go back to the short bird. Well, when you get out of balance, then that going long and coming back short becomes difficult. So developing that balance right from the start and being a little more patient about getting to the, you don't have to teach them not to go back to the short bird by tomorrow afternoon. You really need to kind of gradually expose them to it so that none of these concepts are that foreign when they're exposed to them, because you've uber focused on something that has hurt your ability to do something else. I think that's where people get themselves in trouble.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to take one more question. And Lee asks, I'm having a problem getting a long retired gun with a 25-month-old working towards qualifying. She's a good marker with guns up and can do some retired short birds. I've tried doing an up gun, retire en route, and have had a retired gun pop out en route and retire again. She's just not getting it well. Other than repeat, do you have any suggestions?
Well, I think I'd want to know a little bit more. So when you're saying long retired gun, it's just, is it relationship with the other gunners? Is it because it's tight to a gun? Is it close to an old fall? Is it just the sheer distance of it?
Yeah.
My first thing would be, if is this on memory birds or singles? Like if I'm my first step would be to simplify to do retired singles. So, and probably have to have the guns a little more spread out. So obviously, if we have to run, we're running right off the back of a flyer or a short retired dead bird, that's going to make it more complicated, where having that gun hidden for a younger dog is going to create more confusion, more uncertainty. So I want to have those guns a little more spread out, and I want to start to balance. If she can do it as a multiple, whether it's a double or a triple with the gun out, then I want to do it as a single retired. So, and I think you're on the right track there with potentially retiring the gun a little slower. Though, if I wouldn't want a big walk, but they have an umbrella. You throw that long bird when she's halfway there, you can just kind of pop up that umbrella, or she takes off and you start to see that uncertainty. You can pop the gun back up like he's talking about. I mean, it's just kind of it's just going to take time, I guess. I mean, I don't have a one like, oh, if you do this, she's going to start to do it better. I mean, I think it's a matter, factors are another big part of it. I'd want less factors when I'm starting to teach those long retired guns. Downwind, cover, crosswind. I don't want to feel like there's multiple factors that are working against that dog to get to that long bird. I just want the distance to be the factor. So making it, downwind, make sure it's visible. Throw, again, we could throw two of them. You know, they take off, throw another bird, or throw a bird and then throw a big white bumper before you send it to really lock in that dog and confirm that that's what's going on. White tape, big white boat bumpers. You know, I mean, all those things try to really make that dog extra focused on that long bird before you send it, and get her doing those as singles retired first before I'm trying to challenge with memory.
You know, and I'll tell you, I mean, the one thing that when I read that question, I just want to caution Lee to, you know, if you wake up in the middle of the night thinking, what am I going to do to get this dog to do long retired guns? And that's all you think about. It would be very easy to get super out of balance. And all of a sudden, 6 weeks from now, you said, man, I got to do in these long retired guns. Then you can't do anything else. I would think that you've got to the patience has got to be a part of it. Ray, a lot of the things Ray said were not correction based. They were more teaching based. You took away, you isolated some of the challenges, and, you know, deal with factors on non-retired guns, deal with the factors on blinds, deal with factors on other things, and then make the only factor on that bird just the length.
Yeah, and the other thing just popped. Is it? You said she does some short retired guns. I mean, it feels like maybe she just needs more experience with retired guns in general.
Sure.
So, I
Good
mean,
point.
you could send umbrellas out to every station and do everything as a retired single for a while. I mean, we did that with, I can't remember what dog it was, Pat. Remember, we did like 3 weeks where every mark we did singles like for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and every one of them was retired across the board because the dog struggled with retired guns, and just getting them more.
And we you know, do retired guns where the retired gun is not that retired. In other words, there's a
When they
holding
get out
blind that
there,
they
yeah.
can see. You're not trying to make it the perfect
Or
evaporator.
they get out there and he's behind a hay bale, and if they just get out there, they can find him and figure
because
it
once
out.
they learn the
And don't make
artificial
them-
aspect of it and they start to feel comfortable, then I think then you can start to push the envelope of it. But
And
it
don't
does
make
scare
them-
me a little bit trying to make them too proficient, too quick.
And don't make the birds super hard to find when they get there.
Good point. Excellent point.
By the way, she is running nice blinds past the guns.
So, okay, we got some feedback there, and Lee said that she's running good blinds past those same guns. So that's a big plus. But
Doesn't change.
your
the
last
level.
comment was really profound, where you said, make it easy to find that bird when she goes the distance. Don't make her struggle to, because it's easy to say, boy, we got the perfect bird. It's crosswind, it's through 2 ditches, and it's in heavy cover. Like, let her be successful when she does the right thing. That's a good point. Well,
I got one thing. I know I'm basically out of time, but we didn't go into, we talked about field trials. We've talked about AKC tests. We've talked about HRC. We haven't really went into the crown aspect of it, or the SRS part of it, because now we're combining all those things at once. And again, just to take a couple more minutes, now we're combining all those skill sets into one, where you run a hunt test one series, you run a field trial one series, you do a hybrid, you have the hunt savvy, you're shooting a gun, they have white coats, and
they have some white coats and hunt test in the same test.
So, and you're dealing with plastic instead of birds, which is another factor.
So what is the factor of the plastic? Less motivation to find it, harder to smell it?
I think it's less motivating for the dog, right?
For some dogs.
I mean, some dogs, the feathers are, they're going to live and die with that bird.
Right.
So I think there's a factor there. It can be a little less rewarding if all you do is rewarding to the dog, where if all you ever did was train with plastic. Some dog, again, not all dogs, some dogs are not going to feel as great about themselves or be as happy. I mean, one of our cures for getting a dog with better attitude and a blind is put birds on the blind, right? So kind of the same thing. So I think there's a balance there, but you also can't just do birds where now they won't pick up a bumper, because we've seen that too, where we have dogs that when you do birds, and then you throw a bumper, they don't want to pick the bumper up. So they have to be excited for the plastic. They have to be receptive to the scent, which is very different than a bird.
It's just the joy of retrieving.
And balance all, so I just think it's another factor involved. And then trying to do all those things on the same, like I just talked about, man, if I was going to do a hunt test, I'd focus on that for 2 weeks. And if I was going to do a field trial, I'd focus on that for 2 weeks. Now we're getting ready for the crown. How do we balance all of those things together?
Well, I think that's an individual dog thing. What do you think is their weakest? What do you need to kind of, if they excel at a certain aspect, you certainly need to prep them for the other part. I wouldn't be against if birds motivated better behavior, even though I was training for the crown, doesn't mean I wouldn't use birds in training. I might want to make sure I expose them to it's like hen pheasants. It's a bird that's a little harder to find. It's still a bird, but it doesn't smell as much. I don't have to I wouldn't necessarily feel I'd have to use plastic on everything I did in preparation for the crown. If I thought I wanted to reward certain aspects of their game and I thought a bird would do that better, I would use a bird at times. And I don't necessarily think that, and oftentimes that plastic in training is going to be different than the plastic in the atmosphere of the crown. The excitement of the energy of you and everything around it is as much for many dogs as what they retrieve. So they may not be as excited about it in training, but you get there and there's all the hoopla and the people and your energy and other dogs. They oftentimes think, well, this is game day. It may not be a bird, but they are. I think most dogs would be pretty.
I think they're excited, but I think they know there's a little bit of it. I think they learn there's a difference. And I'm not saying I have an answer. It was something that's come into my mind as, again, that this game's the newest to me of all of these. So trying to, I'm just thinking through some of the stuff as I watch it and the training, because they certainly have to be receptive to it. Because, I saw dogs, we saw when we commentated that test together, there was times when dogs went past what would have been the downwind side of that ATB in a reasonable enough position where they should have smelled it, that they weren't receptive. And then there's some that smelled it right away, even in places where you might not have thought they would have smelled it as well.
Right.
So, that again is balance. I give credit to these guys. I know there's more that, like Stephen Durn, Scott Greer, Clark Kennington, those guys, and I'm sure there's more. So please don't hold it against me. But I think of those three guys that just did the crown, they just did the grand, and they'll be at the Master National. That's a tough, 4 or 5 week stretch there, and having that whole deal. And I go back to, like, when I talk about the teaching process of, okay, if I'm going to teach something, I want to be able to do it over and over, repeat that concept. But we didn't get into, like, as an all-age field trial dog, okay, if I want to teach short-retired guns, I want to do that multiple setups in a row. But when we get ready for the field trial, there has to be a balance of short birds, long birds, poison birds, all that sort of stuff. So my thought going into something like the crown would be, we might do some periods of time where we focus on one of those concepts, like a field trial concept, a hunt test concept, a hybrid whatever, blinds, poison birds, all that. But I think then as you get ready, you got to balance all that stuff out. So the finished dog has to be able to see those different things from day to day and be able to comprehend what's happening. But if I'm just focused on teaching it, I think I can isolate it better.
And you're going to do that over an extended period of time.
Correct.
6 months from, not 6 weeks, not 6 days. So, all right. Well, we could go on forever and ever, but it's good stuff. It really is. And it's great food for thought. And you need to embrace all of these. There's arts to every one of these dog aspects, whether it's different breed venues or different venues within the retrievers. There are cool aspects to all of them, and we need to embrace all of them. And that's certainly what we're here to do. So, well, thank you everybody for being here once again. Thank you, Purina. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
And here we go. This is our 5th of our 6th Purina Masterclass for 2025. And everybody have a great night, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.